So, hey, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody. Day 2 of TechNet and in the cyber world, talking about cyber security. And four gentlemen to my right, I thought I would lead off with something from the past. Everybody remember Johnny Carson and Karnak the Magnificent? Anybody? Well, I hold in my hand an envelope. A child of 4 can plainly see that this envelope is hermetically sealed. It's been kept in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's porch since noon yesterday. No one knows the answer to this, but me in my divine and mystical ways will give you the answer, having never before seen the question. Colonel Paul Stanton, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Davis, Lieutenant Colonel John Hosey, Chief Warrant Officer Abel Chavez. Name 4 gentlemen that we want to pay attention to for the next hour. Security being obviously part of a process, not a yes or a no or a 1 and a 2. Maybe the most important thing is the process going through time. And what we want to focus on today is lessons learned from the past and how do we correct and improve, because we constantly need to improve that. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone to Colonel Stanton and the 4 gentlemen. Thank you.
So I appreciate the opportunity to moderate a panel on the lessons learned from 2 years of experience in building and executing missions from the Cyber Protection Brigade. I will admit up front, I am new to the position, about 45 days into command, so I don't pretend to have the expertise, which is why I surround myself with the types of folks that do. So it's my honor to have on the panel Lieutenant Colonel Eric Davis, who is the Cyber Protection Brigade's Director of the Cyber Fusion Center. He has a computer science degree from West Point, a master's in information security from George Mason University, and he is currently serving as the first director of the Cyber Fusion Center. Lieutenant Colonel John Hosey, prior service as an infantryman and an artilleryman, also a master's degree in computer science, was a team lead for a combatant command-sponsored cyber protection team, is now currently serving as the brigade operations officer. And CW5 Abel Chavez, who is a former member of the Cyber Protection Brigade, where he served as the Command Chief Warrant and is now serving as the Command Chief Warrant for the Cyber Center of Excellence. So a wealth of experience and talent on the panel, and I'm just humbled to have had the opportunity to be their current sitting commander. So by way of introduction, I took command a little less than 2 months ago, and have spent that time assessing where we are as the brigade. And I would submit that we're at an inflection point. Our principal focus to date has been on building the organization, countless challenges and obstacles that the team has overcome in terms of recruiting the right talent, putting them onto the right teams, and defining what it means to execute missions as cyber protection teams. But we have a long way to go. We have to be a learning organization and figure out how to best transition the talent that we have within the teams towards operational effectiveness in defending, not necessarily protecting, but defending our networks against aggressive adversaries. So there are 3 themes in lines of effort that we're initiating from within the brigade. The first is readiness. You heard the panel discuss yesterday, our senior leaders, General Barrett, General Skinner, General Morrison, and others, discussing the requirement to drive towards readiness. We recognize that, but I'll ask Lieutenant Colonel Hosey, our operations officer, to express some of the tangible measures that we're trying to take to define what that means. Another line of effort within the brigade is integration. How do we integrate our operations, our intelligence, and our technical capabilities in a manner that best supports our teams? How do we further integrate our capabilities such that the tactical tools that we have available to us for local analysis at an enclave interact successfully and at mission-relevant speed with the tools that are arrayed across the depth of the enterprise networks? How do we interact and become interoperable with the sensing capabilities that are deployed on the tactical edge? There are significant challenges that we have to face in what I'll call a tight loop. We're only going to learn by executing missions. We have to be out executing missions, and we are. But we have to take those lessons learned and rapidly incorporate them back into the next evolution and sprint cycle of our capability development, which then translates into training on the new evolutionary steps that we're taking forward, the lessons that we learned from conducting missions, and then we have to rinse, cycle, repeat, and do it again, while maintaining awareness of units that are operating to our left, right, front, and rear in a multinational joint environment. No shortage of challenges. Again, I don't profess to be the expert. That's why I surround myself with those there are. I'm going to, in turn, ask Colonel Davis to discuss lessons learned with building and operating the Cyber Fusion Center. I'm going to ask Colonel Hosey to discuss how we're operationalizing our training, driving us towards readiness. And I'm going to ask Chief Chavez to explain how we're integrating our capabilities. And I'll ask each of them to take just a few minutes to explain. And then I really want to open up the forum to your questions to make sure that we're answering whatever it is that you need to or want to understand. So with that, I'll hand it over to Colonel Davis.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. For the past 18 months, I've been the lead developing the Cyber Fusion Center for the brigade. So over the next 10 minutes, I tend to kind of paint the picture of what do we call a Cyber Fusion Center, what have we included within this entity, and then talk about the functions that it does and how are they interacting within that Fusion Center. To begin with, our mission for the Fusion Center is to synchronize operations, intelligence, and technical analysis to enable cyber protection teams to conduct missions with focused capabilities and intelligence. So how do we get after that? So I have 3 main cells that we've stood up. The operations cell, we're in the process of building that to full capacity. In the end, that'll be a 24/7 ops center type of watch officer, battle NCO, battle captain. And they'll be actually tracking the teams once we go to an operational phase. At this point, it's just staying synchronized with our cyber ACOIC G33. Within the intelligence cell, we've pulled across all of our teams, the 35 Fox analysts, and we pulled them together and consolidated them. And we broke those into different geographical areas where we have these analysts focusing their time, and then they become our experts on those intrusion sets in those areas. In addition, we have the signal intelligence analysts that we've embedded over at NTOC, and we have a collections management section within the intelligence cell that basically takes in all of our RFIs and processes those. Within the technical analysis cell, we have 2 officers and 4 DA civilians that their primary role is to help with the tactical intelligence piece. So what is it that you're looking for when you're on the network and you're trying to find bad, you're trying to find adversary? So part of it right now is signature development. Where we like to grow to is more of a behavioral analysis and be able to identify anomalies. So with that comes our newest leap is into big data analysis and how do we leverage that to get after anomalies. In addition, we align what we find as far as tool sets and those capabilities. We align those to the kill chain and do a kill chain analysis for our adversaries so that we can tell the teams if you find this and you're at this phase, and they know where to look left and right to continue to pursue. So by consolidating all these functions into a single facility, we're able to really facilitate a collaborative work environment where operations, through our operations cell, are driving the research and our capability development within the CFC. So the teams, they're getting back a product that is directly related to the missions they're on and is very relevant to the work that they're doing. So to go into our operations, our states of operation, typically we're in two states. What we've maintained right now is our daily steady state operation. But then we also do direct mission support, which is what we're starting to ramp up to. And as we get more personnel and manpower in, then we'll be able to go more to the direct mission support, help teams with the intel planning, help teams with the identifying the adversary ahead of time. So during steady state operations, we stay sync in our op cell, like I said before, with the ACOIC G33. Every day we're on the phone with them, and it allows us to have a look ahead at what missions are coming down, so then we can start anticipating what adversaries we need to look into, what tools do we need to start researching so that the teams have what they need. Our collection management section has a big role at this point in taking all of our information and intelligence requirements and processing those into the IC. So the IC knows what it is that we need, and then as we read reporting, that reporting is more applicable to our missions, and it helps us not have to dig through millions of reports, but be able to focus more on the reporting that's essential to us. Our all-source analysts at this time, we have a very small group. We're building up to 30. They're building that base of knowledge. So they've gone through and they collected all the reporting over the last 7 months. They've been it out by adversaries and by geographic areas. And so they're building that base of knowledge so that when we do go full speed and we have a mission that comes down, they're able to quickly assess whether their adversary, whether their nation, whether their geographic area has both the means and the desire and the capability to attack that defended asset. And so all this right now goes into our brigade bub. Every week we're presenting one slide to the teams to give them an idea of what's to come. So we do a deep dive analysis on a certain adversary, and we'll tell them from the big picture, this is who they are, this is how they fall out in the world, this is what they're after, this is how they do it, here's their techniques, here's their tactics, this is what the tool sets would look like if you saw them. And then we go even deeper to say this is the exact sequence of events that you'll most likely see based off of what we've determined in the past. And in addition, right now we have our single analysts, like I stated before, they're embedded in NTOC. They're working NTOC missions, but eventually they'll be able to help us to craft our RFIs to more specifically get after the missions we have coming up, and how do we request the right information so we get the right intelligence back for the team. So during direct mission support, the way we see this unfolding is the CFC op cell receives the order at the same time the Brigade 3 does. We're on the same district list, so as soon as it comes down from G33, we receive it. Immediately we look through it. If there is an Annex B that indicates this is your adversary, then we immediately dig into the adversary and we get a product going. If there's not an Annex B, then we go across all the cells within our intel cell, and we ask them who in this area, or who in your area would have both the motive and the capability to attack this asset, and then we start building a deeper product on those tools and those people so that the team has something to work off of when they leave the room. So with those, we pull them together into a working group within the CFC. Along with them is the technical analysis, so we'll pull in a person from our technical side, and they'll help work with those analysts to make sure that we have the reporting, but we also have the technical ones and zero level. This is what the team's going to be looking for when they go out there. We go ahead and we build those IOCs and the behavioral profile, and then we draft our RFIs that we think the team's going to need. Simultaneously, the team is doing their own mission analysis on each one of these missions. And as they go through and they identify their RFIs, we consolidate them. Our collection manager, he will then send them out through the process through the ACOIC or through the RCyber, as you were. And he'll make sure that all the RFIs are tracked. And so it's not the team leads time to worry about chasing down their RFIs. We have a dedicated cell that does that. And then from there, the team goes on their mission, and we immediately fall to reach back support. So technical support, if the team needs it, we're there to help them with the triage of any suspicious files. So they find something that was downloaded, they find something on a computer, we can do that triage. Or we can develop a signature if they want to see where else has this file gone. We can give them a quick signature that probably isn't appropriate at the enterprise level, but is very appropriate for that team. The high false positive rate potentially, but it'll help them actually identify the scope of where that file may be. And then we continue to process the RFIs. So this sets the stage for the CFC. Pretty much our lessons learned at this point is that we need the personnel. We need to go deeper than what we've gone before with the intelligence down to the technical level, the ones and zeros. And so that's our main focus now is how do we get the teams that specific adversary data that they need so they know what they're looking for when they're on the wire.
So I appreciate it. We'll do our best to minimize the number of acronyms that we throw out to you, recognizing that I implanted half the room with members of the brigade. They're probably already all tracking those RFIs and the acronym soup, but we'll try to minimize it, recognizing that our industry friends diverted from the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia's session to come visit with us. So we'll minimize that moving forward. But, you know, as Eric was describing, you can start to think about if we have an all-source intelligence analyst, that doesn't necessarily imply that there's technical depth and expertise based on that individual's training. And so there's a significant amount of training necessary to make sure that we're producing viable and consumable products for the cyber protection teams. That being said, let me pull the thread on training a little bit as I hand over the mic to Colonel John Hosey, who will describe how we're moving towards readiness with our training model. John?
Thank you, sir. So everybody, especially this audience, understands that cyberspace presents a new dimension of modern warfare because we've seen since the inception of being able to use IT, it's been a service-provided network. So we've been utilizing it, but now to us it has become key terrain. So now it's items that we can both take and defend. Forces necessary to fight and win in cyberspace face extraordinary mission demands in maintaining the integrity of the networks and the missions that are conducted. Right? So there's a need to provide a highly trained and certified force to answer all the calls for these decidedly specialized missions. So we go into the concept of gunnery tables. So I'm a former field artilleryman and infantryman, as the colonel said, and I'm sure that if you go to any division commander, brigade commander, combat commander, they all understand the idea of a table 8. We have started developing this process with DCO forces through a standardized measure of effectiveness, measure of performance based off of when we go to do evaluations. We have a standard baseline on the DDI, the DCO deployment infrastructure, which will allow us to be able to objectively evaluate individual soldiers as they're going through the training. The goal of all this is to provide combat-ready forces to be able to conduct mission assurance for combat commands, services, and, of course, Joint Force Headquarters DODE. These tables will go from individual training to crew-based training to maneuver element training. So it'll hit it from the individual all the way through the crew. There are basic tables running from 1 through 8, and then there will also be advanced tables, so like multiple maneuver elements at one time, the full CPT depending on the level of mission. So these will all go through those specs. It provides procedures for certification of crews, whether that be internal validation or external certification from outside agencies, whether that be Army Cyber in some instances or all the way up to USACPB in some instances, or even other services once you talk about combat commands. When you say live fire certified, I mean that's most kinetic maneuver commanders understand what live fire certified means. So if we go through and we have our basic maneuver element or the basic crew, which is how we're going to certify, if we say that they are live fire table 8 certified, they're going to understand, yes, these guys know what they're doing immediately off once you say that. When we go into the standardization, so that speaks to, it serves as a guideline to the commander and the soldiers so they understand what they have to do using what tools, how long they have to do it, and that way it's a more objective evaluation of what they're doing instead of a subjective evaluation. These tables will provide prescriptive guidelines and rationale for standardizing, why we're standardizing gunnery, because even though we have different types of CPTs, they should all be able to, let's say, pass back and forth between missions if needed, or supported commands if needed, right? So a combatant command team from one combatant command, if the incidence is high enough a priority at another combatant command, they should be able to pass over and be able to conduct missions upon about approximately the same level. Like I said before, this goes from tables 1 through 8 and then all the way through the advanced tables, depending on the operational need that comes back from the field, because this is a cyclical process right now, right? Because we're still kind of in the building phase, moving towards operationalizing everything. So all of the lessons learned that I learned while all the teams are out conducting missions, it's pulled back into the tables to be able to go further on once we know what we're working with. And as the Colonel said before, that all this standardization and measure effectiveness and measure performance feeds into the readiness of the team. So, and that will give us a more objective readiness reading to all the commanders that we both support and who we answer to. One of the key ingredients for this is also the concept of the master gunner. If you've ever been in or been around maneuver elements, they have either a senior warrant officer or a senior NCO that is the master gunner of that unit. He helps integrate all new soldiers that come into the forces. He's the one that also keeps all the records and certifications of every individual plus crews and teams. He's also the subject matter expert on the defensive cyber operations infrastructure, or our weapons platform, if you will. He manages, develops, and implements the entire gunnery program. So it's not, you have the one individual that's in charge of it, but he has an entire section that would work for him. And then there would be sub-master gunners for each element below us, either for the battalions or the teams themselves. They keep, like I said, and they also advise the commander as the master gunner, since they control all the certification aspects of it. When internal moves need to be made, whether PCSs, ETSs, retirements, med boards, all that, he's going to be the advisor to the commander on saying, hey, if you shift this individual over here who has these qualifications, this is how you're going to impact the readiness of the crew. He monitors both the range that's either being developed or provided, the new tool sets that are coming in, and he's the subject matter expert on pretty much the gunnery program.
So absolutely, I truly understand. My principal mission is to provide trained and ready forces to the operational commands that employ cyber protection teams. Right now, I can promise you, using the vernacular of my high school daughters, I can present wicked smart folks that are really good network engineers and computer scientists, algorithm developers, and script writers. But what I can't certify right now is that there's been an objective, metrics-based assessment that says that they know how to use our kit as a crew in a realistic environment against a realistic threat. But that's what we're driving towards. And we from the Cyber Protection Brigade can't do this by ourselves. Right? We are out executing missions, and we're bringing back very valuable lessons learned. But we really need the expertise, principally from the Cyber Center of Excellence, to help us codify the doctrine, help us build the right capabilities. And no person better to speak to that than CW5 Abel Chavez, who was the senior technical advisor within the CPB and is now the senior technical advisor at the Cyber Center. Chief?
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Yes. So I was sitting there listening to Mr. Pontius' speech earlier today. By show of hands, who was all listening to his speech this morning? And I was doing a lot of reflection when he started off by saying, identifying or depicting the tremendous progress we've made in the last 6 years. And it truly, I lived that dream with him when I was up at Cyber Command. And it is just amazing, from my perspective, the last 4 years of how far we've came from developing a CIFCO, a Cyber Force Concept of Employment, on a piece of paper, a document. I was part of that effort, so I was thinking, that's really good. We got a concept out. I really feel for those guys that are going to actually have to execute it, the service components. So lo and behold, after we finished that CIFCO, I got orders to go down to the CPB, to the execution piece of it, right? So I get down there, and we had no equipment. Personnel were still arriving with no training. And we were faced with the challenge of how do we get this organization and these teams to an IOC and FOC capability. So the challenge was very daunting. Going back to interoperability and an integration of capabilities that Colonel Stanton was talking about earlier, bottom line, the only way you can make that happen is through partnerships and relationships. No one entity alone can make that happen. As I go through my talking points, you're going to hear me identify organizations such as U.S. Cyber Command, NetCom, CIO-G6, partnerships with industry, ACI, all the different elements that it takes to make the Cyber Mission Force the success story that it is today. Back in January of 2014, our cyber submitted an ONS called the DCOI ONS, Defensive Cyber Operations Infrastructure ONS. And what that did, it created a operational needs requirement establishing the requirement for remote DCO operations capability worldwide. Based off that ONS that was approved, we came up with 3 different capabilities based off the approval from Headquarters DA. We had a garrison, a deployable, and a tactical DCOI infrastructure that was approved for implementation. We've moved out primarily initially with the DDI, which is our deployable capability, which is our flyaway kit. And we've also moved ahead with developing a tactical DCOI infrastructure. Right now we're exercising that through NIE and AWA and taking the lessons learned and applying it so we can actually move forward with full implementation. And last but not least is the garrison piece of it. Trying to establish a DCO infrastructure down at the post-camp station worldwide so we have global remote DCO operations, whether it's tactical, garrison, or deployable. Initially, we get to, like I was saying earlier, we get to the organization and there's no equipment. So we partnered up with NetCom, and based off their existing knowledge of how to do DODN operations and enterprise solutions, they developed the version 1 DDI kit. We received a total of 11 kits for 20 teams. You do the math, it doesn't equate, right? So we ended up doing, we got the equipment, distributed amongst the teams based on operational mission requirements, and used it as a centralized repository of kit for the teams as they went out. Like Colonel Stanton was saying, we got our teams out there. Some of them were IOC, some of them were still going to IOC, but they were out there doing operational missions. Based off those operational missions, we had lessons learned, and we developed a program to get our teams back, to come back and consolidate those lessons learned. Based off those lessons learned, we further did additional analysis and developed a version 1 Bravo kit solution. This version 1 Bravo kit solution enabled an OpenStack cloud-based capability, which is different from the way we used to do operations, traditionally relying on VMware. A lot of pushback going to an OpenStack solution, even within our own community. And I would say, you know, we're all preachers of trying to do the same thing that we've always done before. We were here 10 years ago talking about the same kind of challenge when we introduced VMware to the industry. Nobody wanted to embrace it. But look at us now. We can't let go of VMware. So what we forced our folks to do is kind of get out of your comfort zone, learn a new capability, a new technology, and go forward. And to this point, I think we've actually proven the OpenStack solution does work. I know CENTCOM CPT 101 was one of the first ones that actually employed it successfully in a CENTCOM environment. Again, based off that initial capability or initial proof of concept, lessons learned, we bring them back and we further develop our capabilities. Back in May of 2015, our cyber spearheaded our Cyber Innovation and Industry Day Challenge. This goes back to my idea of partnerships with industry. We set up a CFOP consortium and had a total of 300 vendors receive a pitch from the CPB saying, these are our high-level requirements. Can you meet that need? The 300 vendors go away. They start collaborating either amongst each other or within themselves, and they provide a proposed solution. Based off those proposed solutions, we down-selected to a group of about maybe 10 or 12 vendors. After that, those vendors, we provided them additional requirements, and some of them came back with software or hardware-based solutions. The reason we did this is because the military folks, we're used to doing certain things a certain way. It's human nature. But when you throw out a high-level requirement without addressing the specifics to the industry community, those guys are the young folks that are coming straight out of universities, coming out there thinking outside the box, coming up with innovative solutions. And the solutions that they propose were things that we hadn't even thought about. So out of those 8 or 12 vendors that we had, we down-selected to 2. And those 2 vendors went back, and what they did, which I was really impressed with, they collaborated with each other. So two different vendors got together and came up with a collective solution for us, which results in what we have now, a prototype kit in our inventory. What do we do with this kit? We're going to go out there, kick the tires on it, see if it works well, document lessons learned, educate the Cyber Center of Excellence where I'm at now, relationship building, Tickum Cyber. They're here in this audience as well. They're part of the Cyber Center of Excellence. They're working hand in hand with the CPB to capture the lessons learned and the requirements. So at the end state, we can take all these capabilities, go through an agile acquisition process, and eventually make this kit or this equipment strategy a program of record. We'll talk about PEOs and PMs. Right now we're looking at two different PEOs that are supporting this DCO infrastructure effort. PEO EIS is in charge of delivering us the DDI and the Garrison DCO infrastructure. We've also partnered up with PEO C3T, who's leading the effort on the tactical side, in conjunction with PM1T. If you start looking at this and you look at the different exercises that General Fogarty has been addressing over the last 48 hours, we talked about CyberQuest. We talked about some of the solutions that General Morrison addressed during his NetCom brief yesterday. If you look at all this, at the end of the day, all these capabilities, through partnerships with the industry, through partnerships with other organizations, through partnerships with our sister services, which I forgot to highlight earlier, when we've got this DDI kit actually working, we've had the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, all the other service components come to our shop to see how we did business. I think that's nothing but goodness, because we're going to educate the entire DoD community on what a true successful solution is. And we learn from them as well. So that exchange of information, again, going back to partnerships, trust relationships, enables all of us to be better. And if we do not do that collectively, we'll never integrate our capabilities. We'll never become interoperable. We'll never work as a unified DoD. Thank you.
So those are hugely valuable insights coming straight from where the rubber meets the road, both experience in helping develop part of our current solution, but now with Abel's hat that he wears at the Cyber Center of Excellence. I'll just highlight a quick point on the Cyber Protection Brigade's intent, desire, and current record of collaborating across the community. I had Brigadier General Skinner, the Joint Force Headquarters DODN director, in my office this morning for about an hour, doing nothing but sharing ideas, lessons learned that he's experienced from managing the C2 of the DODN, and I had the opportunity to relay some of our operational experiences. Within the first week of command of the Cyber Protection Brigade, our 2 battalion commanders visited their counterparts at Lackland Air Force Base to interact and exchange ideas with the 24th Air Force. So we don't pretend like we can do this alone. Collaborating and sharing is absolutely a critical component to our way ahead. So with that, it really completes our prepared remarks. Please don't feel obligated or constrained with your questions to address readiness, integration, or our capability development efforts. Please, I really want to reserve the bulk of the time to answer the questions that you have, and then leveraging the experience from the other panel members. I'll apologize up front in that I don't have a cool email address to which you can send your questions. So I think that we'll just handle this by raising your hand and calling on you in the old school fashion. So please hit us with your questions, and I promise that I will not call on members of the brigade who have teed up suitable softballs. Please, we want what's really burning on your minds. Sure.
Sir, I heard mention of geographically allocated resources. What happens when you're realizing that disaster is over in area A, happening in B? How sort of people processes are set up involved among the rest?
All right. So, although the individual
Can everybody hear the question? So the question was, given that part of the focus of our Cyber Fusion Center is geographically aligned based on our requirement to support the combatant commands, which are geographically aligned, how do we fuse intelligence considering that cyber and threat actors are not necessarily constrained by geography?
Thanks, sir. So to begin with, the intel community in general works off of geographical alignment. So we have to do the translation somewhere. So that's one of the benefits of having those 5 cells within our intel cell is that once we build the working group crosses all boundaries. So if you have an actor from CENTCOM, an actor from UCOM, and an actor from PACOM, we can piece that all together within that working group and make sure that we have expertise from all those areas talking about the specific threat group for there. In addition, we have one group that is just focused on non-state actors. So they do go, obviously, all across everything. But it's just a way to help us align our thinking and help us to have single points to reach back to when we're trying to collect the raw intel or reported intel that we address.
And you know, clearly discussing in an open forum, the part of the reason for the Cyber Fusion Center is to address exactly that problem. Right? They are our team that has the connections directly to the intelligence community such that they can do that broader synthesis and then yet still create consumable products for a cyber protection team that may be constrained by geography based on direct support to a combatant command. But the intel apparatus in the Cyber Fusion Center absolutely is not. No, sir. We'll fight through. Yes, sir. So the question is, how are we mapping the CPT operational requirements to those that exist with the broader team responsible for defending our weapon systems and our networks? But I don't want to be the only talker here. I'll let Chief.
Yeah, and I think it also part of the question I think I understood, how do you do the continuous monitoring of our networks as well than our mapping capabilities? Or how do we map from CSSP requirements to a cyber mission force? I think one of the good things is, based off the C2, the organizational structure of how NETCOM and Second Army are also have the ADCON of the CPTs. A lot of the information sharing between what the RCCs and what the CPTs are doing is commonly shared. And every time we go out there and we provide mission support, our first stop is to coordinate with the RCC and kind of do a gap analysis of where we have similarities in capabilities and where are the gaps, what are the things that the CPP can do better or can provide, or vice versa. And so you also have the discussion about the support and the supporting capabilities specifically for that mission set. So we've been doing this, I think, for the last 24 months, and we've actually had different visits. We go out there to the CSSP communities and see what the things that they're doing, the new technologies that they're leveraging. And we also have General Morrison pretty much on a monthly basis gets his staff to talk to our staff and say, these are the emerging technologies that we as NETCOM from an enterprise perspective are pursuing. And in some cases, we've adopted some of those capabilities. Because there's nothing wrong with having an overlap in capabilities. That goes back to the whole defense in depth capability. So I think right now we are tied really closely to our RCCs, our CSSP community right now.
So, for example, as well, since I was a UCOM team lead, whenever I was given a mission from UCOM, we'd go in and talk to not only the JCC, who I'm OPCON to, we also talk with the 5th RCC as well as this is also stationed there on the same base. So we got that picture initially, and then obviously we would go back and revalidate by using our own tool sets to ensure that the maps are concurrent with each other.
And additionally, it just took me a little longer to get my mind wrapped around it. During the ACOIC, our cyber's operations center's update. So we sit through that twice a day, but 2 times a week, all the RCCs come online there. Net comes on there every single day. So I get a chance there to interact directly with them. So if there's a mission coming up, they're hearing the mission the same time I am from our cyber G3. And then we're able to deconflict somewhat. The system is not perfect. There is a lot of complaints about that across the board, that we need to get better at doing that cross-talking with our teams in the RCC. But that's at least the initial step, is to open up the channels there to start talking, and then we can take it offline and talk directly with them.
If I could add one more thing from the trade-off perspective. So these individuals are out there living it in real world. So the lessons learned, based off that, we take it and incorporate it into doctrine. So right now we have JP 312 is under revision again, coming up with new guidance coming out of that. Army, at the same time, based off those lessons learned and interoperability within CSSPs and the CPTs, FM 312 will be on the streets shortly. And that will, I think, eliminate or minimize a lot of the confusion about who does what and what are the roles and responsibilities between the service providers as well as the CPTs. Just wanted to add that from the trade-off perspective.
Yeah, better. I was going to make the same point, but Abel does it much better and more eloquently than I can. The added piece, we had stressed the tight loop in terms of capability development, but it's also, as Abel was pointing out, in terms of doctrinal development as well. And to make sure that the folks from the Cyber Center of Excellence are engaged with our after-action reviews after we've conducted a mission, because we have to be a learning organization. All of us across all the entire domain are evolving. The relationships with the regional cyber centers, the relationships with computer network defense service providers, and cyber protection teams with network operators, it's all changing, it's all evolving, and we have to be able to adapt accordingly.
All right, we got a working mic here. Hope everybody backed up this morning. We did.
Hi. As cyber operations don't happen in isolation, I was wondering if you could describe how you're operating and training alongside traditional ground forces, and what are the capabilities that you bring to bear to help achieve objectives of Joint Force Commanders?
So there is an initiative out there right now called Core Support, or Cyber Support to Core and Below. That currently, we have actually sent teams out to NTC and JRTC to support maneuver infantry divisions and armor divisions. So we are actually showing them not only what they would have as organic assets at that level, but we also provide them augmentation by providing DCO planning support. So that's the main effort that's being pushed out to how we're supporting at the maneuver level and incorporating, at least for us, the DCO, the Defensive Cyber Operations support down at that level.
In fact, we have 2 personnel at the National Training Center today integrated with the Infantry Brigade Combat Team in support.
Yeah. And also I'd like to add also, if you've heard General Fogarty's talk over the last 48 hours again, he uses the term CEMA, right? Cyber Electromagnetic Activities. Right, so if you look at that, not only are we just educating what the CPTs could do out there, along with the military, the force, the warfighter, you're also educating the Signal Corps on the gaps that are out there, and also to include the electronic warfare folks. How do you integrate those capabilities into something that a commander can take as multiple options on the battlefield? And that's one of the key ingredients. When you start looking at the way we've taken our DCO planners out there, we've integrated them to the CEMA cell, and actually exercise how the signal community and the electronic warfare community all converge into one environment and produce a good course of action for that commander to be able to execute his mission. At the end of the day, that's what we're all about, right? Trying to get that done. So.
And also, as another point, as being a UCOM team leader, we also at the combatant command level, every time they do their main annual exercise, most of the other services, CBTs as well, so Navy, Air Force, Army, we all play in the exercise, so we're all doing coordination meetings to ensure that there's a holistic view for defensive cyber, and also interacting with the offensive side as well.
Thank you. With a view toward meeting your Table 8 certification requirements and looking at the kit that you've developed, can you provide us with some information about the content of the kit in terms of these commercial technologies, or at least these families of technologies are built into the kit?
Yeah, Yeah, Roger, sir. So some of the things that we're looking at, again, going back to the base operational foundation of the kit is the OpenStack solution. And based around that, what we do is we leverage either through hardware or through software capabilities, sensor capabilities. So in some instances, I could say Security Onion is a good IDS capability that we have. We also leverage the VM technology that's currently out there as well. We also incorporate other kits. We look at commercial industry, Mir, Mandiant, excellent product that's out there by FireEye. We incorporate that into our kit capability. We have additional things that we also leverage into our kit, not necessarily an integral piece of it, but as a component to an add-on capability. We have the ECK's executive comm kits that we pulled out from the JCSC community to enable us to do out-of-band communications with the assumption that the network we're going to defend is already compromised. So it enables us to communicate out-of-band back to a rear support element, to the CFC.
So here's the beautiful thing about the kit as it stands and its foundation being an OpenStack-based environment. So we're not constrained. That was the whole intent. The intent was to create maneuver terrain for the cyber protection teams to be maneuver elements. We don't know what the environment is. We don't know what the threat is ahead of time. Yes, we have some standard capabilities that we will train our teams on, and they'll walk out the door certified and qualified to perform certain actions using certain tools. But the intent is that they fall in support of an existing defensive mission space, whether that be a regional cyber center, a computer network defense service provider. They leverage the tools that are inherent to the defense of the network and enhance them based on being able to maneuver and adjust accordingly. So from an industry perspective, the message to take away is our kit doesn't constrain us in terms of the tools that we can leverage in support of our mission space. And that was a principal design consideration dating back several years.
If y'all remember what General Skinner was saying yesterday about employing the team itself, we were stuck around this 39-man construct, and how do you employ a whole 39-man team? Well, now we've come to realize that you can deploy elements of a team and still be successful. Same thing with our kit. Our kit is scalable to go out there as an entire set of 12 laptops, the entire server equipment, but you can also scale it down and go out with maybe 2 or 3 laptops, if you know, depending on what kind of mission set that you have. We initially started off, as far as tools go, when we first sat down on a whiteboard, 74 different tools to make to identify success, right? And based off discussions with our partners, with CIO G6, we narrowed it out to maybe about 20. And it's still an ongoing IPR. We're still trying to get, how do we get that to a smaller capability, right? Because it shouldn't be a vendor-specific kind of capability. And I think we're going down the right path. We're having IPRs with NetCom, with CIO G6, with our cyber, to say what's the commonality across the board. So we're going back to standardization capabilities.
And to tie it back to some of Colonel Hosey's points about the Master Gunner program, no need to raise hands, but who's an expert in managing the OpenStack environment and configuring the multiple VMs in order to support multiple tools correlating and aggregating data at mission relevant speed? I know there are a couple people in the room because I recognize some faces. That's a complicated task. That is non-trivial. And so I don't want everybody to walk out of the room thinking that everybody in the Cyber Protection Brigade is currently an expert at managing the OpenStack environment. However, that is exactly the intent of instituting the Master Gunner program, such that we do develop the right technical expertise so that when we do walk out the door and we do encounter the unknowns on missions that are global in scale, that we do have that expertise to set up and adjust and adapt rapidly to a changing environment.
To what extent, if any, do you either take information from or feed information into the RMF or the risk management framework process? And maybe that answer is not much.
So, again, going back about 2 years, we had a discussion with the CIO G6 and also with our cyber. How do we go to accredit our systems? It's a challenge because we have to come up not only with a joint standard, but also a national standard with the CNMF. You got DISA CPTs, and a kit is a kit is a kit, right? We're all supposed to be interoperable. But we do feed this information. We're working in partnership with NetCom to actually get our kit accredited. So we provided our artifacts. We ended up getting an ITO for a one-year period, with the intent that within that 1 year we further develop to a full RMF. So I think right now we're on track as of June 2016. Right, we're moving into the RMF phase of it. So I think right now we're on glide path to come up with a full 3-year ATO via the RMF process for our kit.
Colonel Stanton, Brian Williams from Endgame. You mentioned earlier about readiness. You talked about people, capabilities, and training. Of those three, what are your primary challenge for getting to that readiness status? And a follow-up question to this is, Chief Chavez, you talked about interoperability. What are you doing to work across interoperability with other services, the Navy, the Air Force, based upon having to go out and operate in the AOR together, based on, because of some threat?
I'm going to borrow General Barrett's line from yesterday. Yes. Your point is spot on in terms of having to progress across multiple verticals simultaneously. It does us no good to have exquisite capability, yet no one trained in order to employ it. So in terms of priorities, all three, that's why we have 3 lines of effort. But we need to make sure that we're moving them in sequence with one another or in parallel with one another, such that we have definitely high talented folks. We need to make sure that we don't spend an entire year in a closed room with closed doors developing a training model, and meanwhile, in a separate room with closed doors, we build a capability. It absolutely has to be integrated. And in my guidance to Colonel Hosey as he builds out the concept of gunnery and tables, don't build all the way to table 8. Build table 1. And then let's put it into the hands of our capability kits, put it into the hands of the soldiers and the teams, validate that it's actually doing what we want, and then we'll continue to progress. So it's keeping it all in balance as we move forward across all 3 of the areas that you presented.
Yeah, if I could also add on to the readiness piece, if you look, how do you maintain readiness on a weapon? You go to a range, right? So that's one of the things that we do within the CPB. We do have a sandbox solution where we actually get out there, we try to virtualize our kit, incorporate it into this persistent training environment that we have locally, and it allows our soldiers to stay, to not have atrophy or to start losing, because through attrition, through time, without using the kit, you're going to lose capability on that. At the same time, we understand that the Army is the executive agent for the persistent training environment. We're working in partnerships with the Cyber Battle Lab as well as folks out at our cyber to come up with a collective solution that's scalable to a DoD standard, so that other forces can go ahead and still use that range for readiness. The other things that we implemented when we were down there at the CBB, I think you guys are still doing it, is the EDRI. If you remember back in the day, we used to do EDRIs on a given day, 82nd Airborne. We started doing that with our teams as well. You give them on a 4-hour notice, you go out there, recall them, give them the kit, deploy them out somewhere to a certain phase, and then you bring them back. That again, it exercises all your readiness, not just the kit itself, not the individuals, but you're looking at everything: wills, the legal aspect of it, your pay, all those good things, passports. So that's a good way to validate the readiness. As far as interoperability and how we do standardization, as far as the kit goes, intercommunication, we have weekly dialogues with our sister services. We do visits out to the 24th Air Force to see how they're doing with their weapons kit. We provide input to the DMSS solution that the national CPTs or the national mission forces are coming up with. So all the capabilities that we have, we've incorporated it to the higher level, so we come up with a national standard across the board. So if you start looking at the DISA, the FAK kit, if you look at what the Air Force is doing with the Interceptor, what we're doing with our CPB, for the most part, about 80 to 90% of the capability are similar across the board. So that's one thing, is that open communication with our sister services and with higher.
Colonel Stanton and team, you guys are actually looking at building the CPTs right now, and you're looking external. What are you doing looking internal for the insider threats?
And I'm saying that there's some efforts, and Colonel Stanton, you already know, where the Army is working the Insider Threat Program. How can we get together and do some collaboration to ensure that there's unity of effort as far as tools and procedures that will be going on? Because you're looking external, but what about what's going on internal to the network?
All right, so I will tackle this one. I've said previously that a threat is a threat is a threat, as identified through network and log-based activity, until the point that you are able to attribute that threat back to the actor and or its origin. So the process by which you look at analyzing data in order to identify threat activity is the same for an insider as it is for a nation-state actor, up to a point that it starts to look and smell like it could be an insider, at which point you have the ability to then, with the proper authorities and the appropriate folks, to add the added insights that are garnered from additional data collection mechanisms. And then that's that handoff point. But up to the point of identifying anomalies through network-based traffic, I submit that the process for identifying nation-state actors is comparable to that of identifying insiders.
Colonel Stanton, how will the Army leverage the National Guard or the reserves in the cyber protection?
So I wish that my brethren from Army Cyber were here with all the specifics and numbers. The bottom line from the CPB's perspective is that it's a team sport, and the lessons that we've learned in terms of helping to build cyber protection teams, absolutely we're sharing those dynamically with our brethren in the reserves and the Guard component as they build out teams. The interoperability and data sharing between teams as we build out those with different authorities and different capabilities, that's yet to be determined. It is definitely, we have our eye on the way ahead in our discussions with the Army cyber leadership, but we have yet to reach a point where we are dynamically sharing actual operational insights with our Guard and Reserve friends. We're sharing the insights of what it means to build and train and equip the force, but we have yet to get to a point where we're dynamically operating and sharing mission-related information.
Thank you, sir. Let me tag team with my brother Paul. Didn't see me here. So his point is spot on from the team level. At a little bit higher with sharing with the National Guard, Northcom has employed a couple of Air Force Air National Guard, or one Air Force Air National Guard team. And Colonel Stanton is spot on. The actual TTPs, we haven't got to sharing that, but what they've requested from the Joint Forces Headquarters Cyber is more C2 and how to employ a team. What the other services don't have, and this is my shameless plug for the CPB that we have, they don't have this right here. And so this is a blessed state for the Army, and in general, it's a blessed state for the Joint Force, because if everyone emulates this, then we can really get to the point of sharing what we've learned, from tactical employment to operational planning to the strategic vision that should cut across every CPT, be it a service CPT or a combatant command CPT. So there is some sharing going on. There are plans. General Hager, who's now taken over the 335th Provisional Command in Camp Arifjan, he started working part of this as a reserve component general officer on how to build up the teams. But specifically to your question, the sharing from a team dynamic, it's not there. It's just the command and control of the employment of a CPT in support of a combatant command, and in this case, NORTHCOM. Now I'll pivot to my question. Some of the comments that have been brought up earlier.
I thought that was just phone a friend and you were helping me out. From a Joint Force Headquarters J3 perspective,
Sir, before you go on to the next question, sir, I would also like to add, going back to 335th, we've partnered up with CW5 Owens over there. We've given him lessons learned from the trade-off perspective. They're also moving ahead, the National Guard and Reserves, with implementing the 17 series. So if you look at that, you probably see their mill professionals come out and say, this is where we're going to transfer some of the 255s and the 35s over to the 17 branch. So we're working that in conjunction with them. Some opportunities to share TTPs. And we've done it in exercise environments. Cyber Guard is an excellent venue where you have the National Guard CPTs out there for the last couple of years and saying, how do the active duty CPTs do it? How does the Air Force do it? How does the Army do it? So based off those environments, I think they're learning as we have further exercises on that. So I think that's another opportunity to share that information.
So to take that as an operational, we talked about the EDRI program earlier. So every time we've conducted an EDRI and we've kicked a team out of Fort Gordon, we've actually sent them to both Marietta, Georgia, to the Joint Force Headquarters, Georgia headquarters, or to Fort Gillem, just south of Atlanta. They interact with the Georgia Army National Guard. I think it's 170 CPT. So we're sharing TTPs that way, as well as eventually, I believe next year in 2017, we're participating in Vigilant Guard, which is a Georgia Army National Guard exercise where we will provide our QRF in support of that exercise to the adjutant of Georgia.
Can I pivot to my question now? Okay. So one of the challenges we face defending the network is making sure we don't cross streams. From a DCO perspective, which from what I've learned and what I've preached, DCO requires commander's guidance and intelligence. And crossing the stream with NetOps, which is the daily mission of making sure the network is operated, maintained, and defend to a certain level. Could you just share any insights on how, when you employ an Army service CPT, how you overcome some of those struggles and challenges from a CPT falling into a NetOps mission vice conducting DCO?
Yeah, I think from a service component CBT, it's a learning process. So you go out there, and by nature, who do they point the CBT to? They point them over to the S6, right? So I think going back to the doctrine development, if you look at JP 312, the next iteration that's coming out, they're going to have a fifth action. They talked to OPE and those kind of things, but now they've added cyberspace security. Right, so when you hear that term, don't confuse that with cybersecurity, which is more of the policy or the accreditation piece of it. Cyberspace security equates to what used to be computer network defense, right? So there's the install, operate, maintain, protect, secure, harden capability that the S6 community does. And the CPT, through, again, dialogue, number one expectation, when a CPT goes out there and gets employed to support a team, there should be some customer or mission owner and CPT dialogue, and kind of create those delineations of responsibilities beforehand. That way when you get on net, you understand clearly what your roles and responsibilities are. So again, I think it's a learning process. Again, waiting for doctrine to catch up with it, and constant communication while on mission, and before, during, and after.
Yes, sir. Also, I'll caveat with that. So the G33, Colonel Trammell, this is one of his big points, is when our team's on a mission and they come across something, they are literally side by side with the newest term CSSP. They're handing over. If I find something suspicious, I hand it over. I continue my mission. Whatever my initial objective was, I go after that. I do not change mission unless I get a frag that says, yes, go look at that new thing. So they're hipped up or tied to the hip with the CSSP, and they're handing them whatever they find, and they're working side by side. So there's definitely a lot of communication.
And that's not only at the Army service team level. It's also at the combatant command level. So at UCOM, whenever we conducted exercises, we had the open chat windows with the RCC's operator maintainers, and we also had the open chat window with DISA and the JCC as well. So, it's an integrated fight because it's a defense in depth, right?
So I'll highlight too the doctrinal distinction between a protect mission and a defend mission. And so the CSSPs are responsible for the protect mission and to a degree moving towards defend. The CPTs are a defend-oriented force focused on threat and terrain. if you think about it in kinetic terms, we're a reinforcing element. When the enemy has penetrated or threatening to penetrate, or we've identified their main avenue of approach, we reinforce the defensive forces accordingly. That's the role of the cyber protection team. Now, might we step in and provide direct assistance? Absolutely. Where we need to make sure we delineate the command and control moving forward is where do we hand off the baton? Where is that transition point? And it goes back to this is a learning, agile organization, and so is the entire community. And so as we go forward and learn the lessons, they need to be directly influencing the next iteration of our doctrinal documents.
And if I could add one more thing, there's a recent operational experience. I think it's unclassed, but the Joint Staff, good example, right? Things that we talk about, incident response. For the last 2 years, when we talked about incident response, who do they send out? CPTs, right? But I think that's okay. We're out there educating folks, hey, this could have been, if you look at the service components, the Air Force did it a little bit different. When that incident occurred, who did they deploy first? Their service providers. So I think it's a cultural thing. I think it's also a discussion. We got to have that discussion within the Army and say, who's supposed to do what? Who's the first responder? Because oftentimes you send a CPT, that might be overkill. If you have your local organic capabilities, it's not only detection, but what's the action you take after that as a defender or even a cybersecurity professional?
I'm not seeing any more hands. Colonel, anything to close, wrap up comments, or?
Sure. For those that know me and have worked with me previously, I'm not going to give up 5 minutes. One point that I'd like to stress, the additional line of effort from within the Cyber Protection Brigade that I didn't hit on in the introduction is talent management. So I did stress that we have an incredibly talented force. The team members, civilians, soldiers are outstanding in their skill sets. It's now our responsibility to make sure that we align those skill sets appropriately and according to the mission requirements, and that we build teams that put the right skills at the right place at the right time. And so that's a critical undertaking that we're doing internally within the brigade, but then also helping inform the evolution of the domain and the cyber branch as it expands within the Army. So with that, I really appreciate everybody's time. I guess it's still this morning, barely. I recognize that you opted to come here as opposed to being at many of the other opportunities presented by TechNet. And the panelists and I will be around for a little bit afterward, and we'll certainly be at the conference until its conclusion this week. Thank you very much for your time.